Welcome to the Breaking 90 podcast, where we talk about all things sustainable fat loss. We take people on 90-day journeys to creating fat loss forever. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome back to the Breaking 90 podcast. I am one of your hosts, Kelly Sarlo, here with my amazing co-host, Jerrika Rydell. Hey, Jer, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited to be back. I feel really rusty.
I know, me too. Oh, me too. It's okay. I've done one with Alex now, so I had a bit of a buffer here, so feeling a bit
Good.
better.
I should have let
Yeah.
you lead today then.
It's okay. We'll be fine.
Good.
What's new with you?
Well, super exciting. And I know you have really exciting news too. We just got official plans for our new build that's happening next year.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
So we bought
That's
property.
wild.
Yeah, just outside of North Bay, which is where I'm currently
Okay.
living, and I've grown
Yeah.
up here. So we've got farm property. I've got to figure out how to be a farm girl in the next little while.
I have no doubt you'll thrive.
Thank you. Yeah, so we have official plans. The property is ours. Everything's in motion, and it just
Wow.
it feels so far away, but at the same time, when you look at how many decisions need to get made from now until then, it feels like no time at all. So
There's so much. Like, it's going to come down to picking out, like, you're building everything ground up.
mhm.
Like, think about like door handles and
Yeah,
cupboard handles. Like, there's gonna be decision fatigue overload.
I know.
Prepare yourself.
So I'm trying to figure out how to streamline the decision-making process, but
Yes,
I think people will probably be laughing at me when they hear this.
Kelly's, for everyone listening, you're like the most organized person I know. You're gonna have like Excel spreadsheets and apps figured out, I'm sure, by the end of it. So
That's true.
yeah, you and Kat are, she's in good hands.
Thank you. I think we complement each other well. So yeah, that's the new and good portion
I'm
of things.
really, really excited for you. I'm so
Yeah.
happy to see you. You doing so well.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome, awesome. What do you got for us today?
Okay, so I want to
Oh,
blend your
okay.
expertise. What was the sigh for?
I'm just nervous.
Oh, okay. Well, you can veto it if you don't want to, but I
Okay.
I wanted to blend mindset with movement and ask you your expertise as a movement coach, how you coach individuals through movement when they are stuck in an injury kind of mindset.
Cool. Okay.
Because I know for some people, injuries happen, right? They happen. We roll our ankle walking to the car. It's not necessarily that it happened during a workout or on a program or anything. Like, life happens. But when they get into that protection mode of their body, how do you help them through to keep moving?
Love it. Okay. There's a couple directions we can take this.
Okay.
Um, so there's a couple questions I can throw back at you first, I guess. I think
Okay.
first thing I would ask you, do you want me to give an example as if like it's an online coach and this is how I'm interviewing
Yeah.
the person, for example? Okay, I would
Sure.
first ask like the degree of injury. I think the how severe it is can play a big factor in kind of my advice what I give next. So if it's something so debilitating that they have been to the hospital and you might be on medication, like it's a severe injury, then my advice of course is going to be to listen to your body. We're going to rest, we're going to just um maybe you're winning that day by getting up and going to the bathroom a few times. Like, the wins and the advice will be very minor. I'm still going to encourage movement because I do believe that any injury is going to benefit from some type of movement. Like if it's an ankle injury, for example, and you're casted up, well, that's a different story. And we can talk about doing upper body stuff depending on the severity. But I just want to talk about if you're like bed bound. Yeah, I'm just going to encourage just day-to-day movements. I'm going to say, keep me posted with how you're feeling, but rest is your first priority. But what I'd like to dig into is the 90% of our clients that have some form of nagging injury from maybe their high school careers, sports careers that's nagging now into their 50s, things that just kind of lag on. That is what we see. I'd say 90% of our clients, right? They all have something that we're working around. And it definitely, at some point or other in their journey, it definitely affects their mindset component. And so let's say, I'm going to give another example, shoulders. That's probably the one we see the
Yeah.
most, shoulder injuries. So I would just recommend having that conversation with me, because there's so many things that we can do around the shoulder. Like we can still keep the body moving, we can still target the legs. It just really depends what their goals are at the end of the day. So then question one would be the severity. Question two would be, okay, so what are your goals? And, you know, if they're going to sit there, I had a client yesterday actually, and their goal was to do pull-ups, but they had a pretty bad shoulder and neck injury, right? So that was a good conversation we had to be like, you know, maybe right now, pull-ups are going to come down on that, on the list of goals, because you know, utilizing the shoulder and the back muscles just aren't where we're at right now. And so we had to just kind of talk them down a little bit in order to be like, there's other things we can focus on. It doesn't mean, this is the key here, doesn't mean we can't do, we can still do something over nothing, right? And that's one of our guiding principles, is we can still target, for example, I still had them doing physio type movements of the shoulder that's still going to benefit in the long run. To say, okay, let's teach you how to use your back, your lat muscles, so that just with like the super light band. So in their mind, it's just rehab. But in the long run, when we're doing pull-ups, we're now going to activate the right muscles instead of kind of using our neck and our biceps and the wrong muscles. Not, I wouldn't say wrong, but the secondary muscles versus using the right one. So we kind of, we turned it into a positive conversation by saying, let's just work this while we're still doing our lower body, but we'll still do our rehab exercises, so that 3 months from now, you're going to be doing pull-ups and it's going to be great. Sorry, I kind of just went all over the map here, but it just made me think of my client yesterday and that conversation we had. So
it's a good
kind
example.
of direct me where you want to go.
Well, I like that you started by asking severity first, because I think
Yeah.
for a lot of people, they think an injury is an injury and now I need to just rest. And it's like, you need to actually check in and assess, like, as a little rolled ankle still has a ton of real, like, what do you call it? Realty, where you can still work out other muscles without aggravating your ankle. So that check in first, I think, holds people accountable to be like, okay, this isn't where I need to be, like, leg up, elevated, sitting motionless, etc. Right?
When in reality, if it is a rolled ankle, I would want you moving it as like, you know, as a professional. I would be like, okay, let's start doing some ankle circles and things like that. Like, keep it moving. The studies are just showing endless positive results on movement as your rehab versus just throw it up, put some ice on, and see it in a week, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it even the rehab component, which is not really what I'm talking to. Like, I'm not a physiotherapist, but even that component is showing a lot of positive results and saying, get off your butt and keep moving, sort of conversation.
Yeah.
But yes, you're right. So then you can dive into upper body movements. There's nothing saying you can't focus on your core, right? There's so many other parts of our body that can be targeted. And or maybe you're just or maybe you hurt your wrist and you're like, oh, Jerrika, I can't lift weights today, I can't even do legs because I can't hold a dumbbell. It's like, well, you can go for a walk. Like, right?
Yeah.
yeah so it's so often we have those types of conversations. It's just giving someone that reality check.
Yeah. It's wonderful, because I think for a lot of people we talk about the all or nothing mindset a lot, right? And it's just like a total write off for your entire week. It's an excuse to just sort of sit still. Can I ask you, when you say I encourage day-to-day movements, can you dig into what that actually looks like? Because I think people will sort of gloss over that term and not really understand what you're encouraging when you're talking about the smaller injuries.
For sure. So that's when it kind of circles back to, we're always looking for kind of even everyone's always looking for the easy way out, right? The easy way to do things. And when we're injured, it's that good excuse to just take it easy and rest. And then maybe we're not tackling, like I said, the day, maybe we're not going to mow the lawn, or maybe we're not doing as many loads of laundry that day, which we had targeted, or maybe we're not meeting our friend for that walk because, oh, I'm injured, I should rest. When in reality, keeping that purposeful movement up that we've definitely targeted in many of these podcasts, keeping our purposeful movement up throughout the day is one of the best things we can do when we're injured. So that what often, I'm going to dig into nutrition just quickly.
Cool.
Oftentimes what happens when we're injured, right, is we don't realize, but we're still eating the same calories, for example. We'll just say calories. We're still eating the same intake, but then we're injured, so our movement drops significantly, right? So now we're seeing a weight gain when we can help mitigate that by keeping our purposeful movement up, keeping our NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So that's the calories that we burn, just doing our regular day-to-day movements. So if we can keep that up when we have a small injury, depending on, again, what that injury is, we can help kind of keep ourselves in that maintenance phase rather than seeing ourselves dip into kind of a surplus and starting to gain throughout the injury.
Well, you mentioned one thing too, like figuring out what people's goals are. And I wanted to kind of, I guess, parse it
Mm-hmm.
out for people who might not be able to put these things together is that, let's say your goal is to be, running a particular distance or at a particular time for that distance. And all of a sudden there's an ankle injury. And you're like, well, you can still work on your core. You can still work on your upper body, let's say, right? And people might think, well, that's not the goal. The goal is distance and running. And it's like, yeah, but everything that you're doing to the rest of your body to
Yeah,
stay muscular, to stay lean, to have that core engaged when you're running, like all of that is still contributing directly to your goal. So to think that
absolutely.
it's just hitting the pavement and pounding it is a misconception that there's only one way to reach the goal.
Absolutely. And if you have access to a spin bike or any type of bike and your ankle's able to move through that range of motion without that, like you said, the pounding pressure, the correlation between running and getting on a cycle bike is actually pretty awesome. So you can keep up the cardiovascular component as well. So there's so many ways that you can have that conversation with your coach or with someone to be like, how can I still work around? What's the end goal? Okay, maybe it is my heart that I struggle with running the most. Well, then let's find other ways to do cardio to keep our heart pumping.
Very cool. Okay, I love that. So you could be rowing and not bothering your ankle in the least.
For sure. Yeah. And there's different ways to row, whereas some people, they'll come right in and bend their ankle where you can just do different positions. There's ways we can work around it to still keep things, keep that heart going.
Cool.
Um, you mentioned the goals and I want to just make sure we'll talk about a strength goal as well, just because you brought up running. So
Mhm.
it's good to always have the opposing. So if your goal is strength, and we kind of touched on this in the beginning, but if you come in here with specific strength goals, right? Like Kelly mentioned, even even if I give you a back squat and you have an upper body injury, back squats are still those compound movements where it's requiring your full body activation. Even though, yes, I'm not pressing the barbell overhead necessarily, I'm still activating, like I'm pulling the barbell down on my back, I'm squeezing my back muscle, squeezing my core. So you're still getting overall muscle growth is the goal, right? And just because I'm doing a squat and you're thinking I'm using my legs, so that's what's going to grow the most. You're still going to see progress in other areas of the body because it's a compound movement. And that's kind of what we would dive into. What sort of compound movements can you still do that can still activate the muscles without taking it necessarily through its full range of motion? Because that might be where there's pain. So there's still ways we can achieve these strength goals working around the specific injury.
Beautiful. I have a question. I don't know if it's gonna like throw off the direction that you wanted to
Ah,
take
no,
this.
I don't have a direction, so that's okay.
Okay, good enough. I think about the immediate instinct, I guess is the right word, to protect the muscle or the area of the body that we've hurt. How do
Yeah.
you help cue people or help them cue themselves to go, oh, that minor correction of, okay, I've been, I raised my shoulder because I'm trying to protect the injury. How can I bring it back and relax the muscle? Like, do you have ways that you coach them out of that injury mindset?
Interesting. I think one of the best things to get out of that protection mode is breath work. And I'm
Mm.
sure you use that in your practice as well. But like you said, we don't even realize, but we're holding that muscle tense. We're elevating it. We're keeping it tight to our body. And if you just take 5 minutes and actually breathe, it's crazy. Even if you just look at yourself in the mirror, and that's I do use the mirror reference. So that's a good
Mm.
side note. Is I'll have them look at themselves in the mirror. Even just doing the breath work and looking at you right now, I can just breathe through it and slowly feel my shoulders drop. Right, and again, the shoulder injury is one of the biggest ones. So we typically see it up at someone's ear when they're injured, and it might not drop like inches, but just feeling almost the weight mentally sort of come off, that can do wonders. It's that kind of mind to muscle connection that can do wonders just for the healing process, even if it's not actually dropping in reality.
Mm.
So breath work is huge, even just for the stress response in the body. Mirror, so I'm looking at ourselves. A lot of mobility, of course, just cueing. I love to teach people how to use a trigger point ball or a lacrosse ball or a
Mm.
tennis ball, something like that. So I like to encourage self massage so that they can really feel the connection between the ball onto the muscle. So when they're leaning back onto the wall and they're rubbing the ball along their shoulder blade, for example, it's like, okay, that's the area that's really tight. That's the area that's just has a knot, for example, so they can really feel it themselves. And that seems to help kind of teach them what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Love that.
Awesome. Anything else you have for me?
No, I really love this. I want, well, we both want to help people come out of their limitations, however physical or mental or emotional they are, right?
Yeah.
And I think injury attacks all of them. So it's just a great way for people to reframe.
So can I throw this back at you for a second?
Yes.
Okay, I think it would be cool just to quickly touch on, because you said it has such a mental component as well. Um, you've made a couple remarks about like things you would say, or throw back at them. But is there anything else you would coach them through if they're dealing with an injury, like has that mental block, like the I can't kind of mentality?
Yeah. I mean, kind of two approaches. I definitely would check in about self-talk because a lot of people will beat
Yes,
themselves up about how the injury shouldn't have happened, and there can be a lot of like shame, blame, and guilt going on internally, which
sure.
also exhausts us, and then we just give up on moving because we're so tired with the injury itself and with our attitude, I'll say.
Yeah.
Um, but when it comes to checking in terms of that, can you repeat how you framed it? Because I've misworded it in my head and I liked yours
Just,
better.
I think I'm thinking like, yeah, just like coaching tools or tips you would give if they have that mental block and like the I can't sort of mentality.
Yeah, I think this might sound juvenile, but I really like this. When we typically put our headspace in a scenario of where we have to teach a child how to do something, it's almost like we immediately know how to break things down into smaller pieces or smaller steps. And I think when we're getting out of the all or nothing mindset, if we can coach ourselves or speak to ourselves as to how we could do something over nothing, like you mentioned, we
Yes,
start to be able to break down, like, okay, well, if I can't do the back squat, what can I do that are pieces leading up to it? If I can't do the run, what are pieces I can do leading up to it? So it's just cueing people to break things down into manageable steps instead of thinking about the whole outcome. That's how I would challenge people to start
awesome.
approaching what they're doing, whether it's going down to get the laundry done or engaging in actual exercise.
And it's like, it might sound so simple, everything that we're sort of coaching for those that are listening. It's like, yeah, I know I could do something else, but it's having that accountability coach or the professional to be like, look, let's break this down. Like,
Mhm.
let's get you excited maybe about another goal right now, right? It's just about reframing. And I think I'm so glad you brought this podcast up, this topic, because although we all know it, it's
Mhm.
just it needs to be iterated in different ways to be like, okay, get off the couch, right? And no, it's so important. There's something you said that it just made me think of another point, but um, I just wanted to touch on, you know, you said talked about the mentality aspect, but if they do have an injury, it's like I can sit down with you, and maybe it was one that, I hate to say it, could have been preventable, right? So then they are beating themselves up about it. But it's like we can sit down now and be like, okay, what can we do so that next time we
Mhm.
do prevent this, right? Maybe you had a really weak ankle and you
Mhm.
decided that running a 10K was the best idea. And I'm
Mhm.
like, maybe if we talked before, it wouldn't have been the best idea, right? So now it's like, okay, so how can we strengthen it? What can we do to make sure that this doesn't happen later on? So we
Yeah.
can decide first if it was a preventable in quotations type injury, and if it was, it's like, okay, now let's work on it. Like this is exciting because now we can focus on one of our weaknesses. It's just about kind of reframing and having those conversations.
That's really cool. I love your example because I think as a non-runner, just listening to you, like I'm thinking if I've weak ankles from soccer, right?
Yeah.
My youth career in athletics gave me weak ankles because people would take them out quite a bit. If I decided, okay, I'm going to start to be a runner, it's a very forward motion. It would not dawn on me that a weak ankle would contribute to a hard time running because there's no side to side or that lateral movement. So if you sat down and said to me, okay, maybe that wasn't the smartest idea. Here's a piece of education in that your weak ankle is still going to contribute to problems going forward, literally. It excites me to think about you asking the question, okay, how can we strengthen that? So in the future, you have easier times running. Like, I think also being able to jump into that mindset, or as simple as it sounds, deciding that that's going to be your mindset. Oh, cool. I could learn something here to strengthen it so that I'm actually even better in the future is a much more beautiful and inviting approach to your injury than anything.
And I don't want to scare people from starting to run tomorrow, right? It's not like, think about your whole body, what's weak, okay, I can't do it, right? It's just not,
Yeah.
not saying that to scare you from running, but it could be as simple as making sure you do a warm up before. And a warm up might
Mhm.
include some calf raises, or it might include some ankle circles. Like it could be as simple as
Cool.
that to make sure that we're warmed up properly and prior to jumping into that run instead of just opening your door and beating it down the street,
Yeah.
right? So it's just, I want to encourage you to start doing whatever you want to do, but it's just, I'm encouraging you to do it in a little bit smarter of a way, to just slow down, do the warm up, and you'll be all right.
That's actually what I was thinking about too when I gave the example of heading down to do the laundry, where, and always think about going down steps because that's how I grew up. But I think for some people, it's like, okay, I'll carry the laundry basket and I'm going to go into the protect, just get down the stairs so I can get the job done. And that's where I was saying, like, thinking about the end result can sometimes overwhelm you, where you're like, I'm just going to push through this. Instead of thinking, okay, in the
Yeah.
next 7 steps, how can I focus on my range of motion? How can I focus on, am I trying to protect it? Because we'll take the ankle and not just protect that, but we'll pull the hip up into the body, right?
Exactly. So
And
now
it's
we've
like,
got little back problems.
yeah. And it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
how
yeah.
can I use the next 7 steps going into the basement to mindfully
Mhm.
release or relax those muscles and work through very slowly the actual range of motion to just walk downstairs, right? And
Yeah.
test that out instead of like this on the railing or something, right?
Yes.
So
Yep.
breaking that down into manageable pieces too about this is just a stage in getting the laundry done. And then I'm going to focus on my range of motion on the flat surface, walking from the stairs to the laundry room, right?
Yep.
I think for a lot of people, it's rush, 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 or muscle through, however you want to look at that. And it can be part of how you're testing limits by slowing things
Yep.
down.
Yep. Such a good reminder that pushing through mentality is, it's been on social media, it's like that stay hard mentality, right? Everyone's kind of getting thrown at you in the gym sort of environment. They call it like stay harder. Yeah, push
Oh,
through. It's David Goggins, if you're familiar.
not
Um,
my middle name, I'll tell you that much.
but yeah, it's like basically do things even though you're uncomfortable or you're hurt or whatever, and push through.
Okay.
So I think sometimes it's I'm not a big fan because it can just be so
Yeah.
detrimental long term. So,
Mhm.
anyways, love it. Great topic.
Cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed this conversation. Regardless of whether or not you're injured, regardless of whether or not you have a nagging injury, I think one of the things I'd love for people to pull out from this podcast is to actually check in with your muscles, check in with how you're naturally holding them throughout the day. If you're sitting at your desk listening to this, check in with your shoulders. If you are listening to this while you're driving, check in with your non driving leg to see if you're gripping that into the body, right?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes we don't realize how much we're protecting ourselves throughout the day. And then we don't understand why we're sore or fatigued even afterwards. So this is just a really great chance to reconnect with your body.
Awesome. Great tip. I love
Awesome.
it.
Okay. Thank you so much for your insight. That was really, I knew you were the right person. Let's put it that way.
A little bit all over the place, but we came back and we honed in. We got it.
Yeah, we did. Awesome. Okay. So to everyone who's listening, thank you for being here. We've had wonderful feedback on the podcast lately. So we'll invite you to keep coming back every Tuesday. Do us a favor, take a screenshot from wherever you're listening and share it to your favorite podcast platform. Tag a friend who you think might benefit from this. And if you're feeling pretty generous, you can always leave a review on the podcast. That helps us get the word out to more and more listeners. Have a beautiful
Awesome.
day.